Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is you're watching this. I hope you're all having a good day. This is going to be a fairly short video. It is going to look at the article from the Anthropocene Reviewed entitled The Yips, and there are several examples within that article that I believe will help you as you write your definition essay. I will plan to do this with a couple other readings that we have that we've covered. Um, but these samples, I hope, give you some idea of things you can do to make the definition essay better. Let's begin by something that I didn't put on the essay parameters, but I think is really important. Why is the term you're picking for the Mount Marty zeitgeist, why is that a good term? Green talks about the yips have many names: whiskey fingers, the waggles, the freezing. But I like the yips because it's an anxious word. I can feel the muscle twitch inside the word itself. If you take a look at what Green has done here, he's using this adjective anxious, but he is also linking it to a physical feeling. He does not just do the what. What are the other names? He does not just do the why necessarily. I like the yips because he also gives me a how involved in all of that. And so I think it's important to think about giving your reader enough detail to talk about why your term is a good term. It's better than whiskey fingers, waggles, or the freezing because it's an anxious word. Those words don't produce the angst that yips does. And in fact, yips is so anxious, the muscles twitch inside the word itself. All of those, I think, are important as you're thinking about defining your term. Why is this the best term for the Mount Marty zeitgeist in the year of our Lord 2022? Next, notice that there's a formal definition: a state of nervous tension affecting an athlete in the performance of a crucial action. Remember, you have to have a formal definition. Pull something out of the dictionary, and it can be any of the online dictionaries. Just make sure you tell me which one, and that citation can be right within the paragraph itself. It doesn't have to be an extra citation at all. MLB uses that definition as part of an article on the Yips from 5, 6 years ago. Players encounter a mental hurdle that won't permit them to complete one of the game's mundane on-field tasks. That's a definition of the Yips. It's a fairly standard one. It matches the definition we had earlier: can't perform a crucial action, mundane task, basic thing. But it also goes through and talks about the context. Experts take precaution because they don't want to talk about the player having a deficiency or being a liability. So, context is also important. Make sure you're explaining the context you're providing for your essay. The negative: it's no mythological plague, it actually happens. And then they give me some examples. You can't find the first baseman's glove on routine throws. You can't return the ball to the pitcher. You can't do certain basic things that every major league player should be able to do. In fact, that every high school player should be able to do. So I have a negative definition. It's not a mythological plague. It's not a faux disease. It actually happens. I'm adding the formal definition to show that it's not a myth. And then I'm giving concrete examples. This is a perfect example of something you can do in your introductory paragraph for your definition of the zeitgeist. This slide is in here for context. The idea that it's clouded, that baseball players don't like to talk about it. that it's an unwritten rule, that it's a taboo subject, and the players want to avoid talking about the yips. You too have to provide some context. What's going on at Mount Marty at the present time so that you can make your definition of the zeitgeist, your label of the zeitgeist, excuse me, and then the definition of that label makes sense. So, again, this article I think does a good job. And if you pause and read here for a second, you can do enough to Google the entire article if you want to. Going back to green, again, there's context. Serious athletes know the yips are possible. That's awesome. But this analogy, I think, is important. If you start thinking about how you come down the stairs and think about how each muscle is working, you can't go down the stairs. The yips mean that if you start thinking about everything you're doing, you can't make the throw to first, or you can't do something very mundane like catch an easy pop fly. And once you start making the mistake, then you can't not think about how to not make it. Those sorts of things, I think, are important elements of your definition. What are some simple analogies? Analogies that everyone can understand. Everyone can understand falling down the stairs. Everyone can understand that walking up the stairs requires no thought until you start getting nervous. Make sure your analogies fit. And again, definitions by analogy I think are great. Another one, the school play. All of us have been part of a school play or seen a school play. We've seen the painful moments when the kid forgets the line, everything stops, and then everybody's aware. You could talk about a speech and speech class where people all of a sudden forget where they are and they just freeze. This is the yips. There's a pain involved. Everything just slows down. And again, this is not necessarily the yips itself. This is somebody watching it. But still, the context, the analogy, those examples of an analogy, I think, work. And make sure your analogies are simple. Make sure they're common everyday analogies that make sense to nearly everyone who could be reading your essay. Green also goes with a negative definition and a description. The yips are not the result of performance anxiety. And then he gives you this physical, my arm muscles jerked just before the racket hits the ball. A description can and should be part of the definition. And the jerk, that active verb, we've talked about using active verbs. We're going to keep working on using active verbs. That too is, I think, an important element. Negative definitions work. It's not this thing. I think this is going to wrap it up. But again, look for, as you're reading green, as you're reading other things, look for samples to follow. Negative definitions, descriptions, the formal definition, working to blend through everything. All of those can be part of the definition essay. And again, because I was running through this quickly and didn't do a take, remember, you are looking at the zeitgeist, you are labeling the zeitgeist, and you are defining your label for the zeitgeist of Mount Marty in the fall of 2022. And again, you can use analogies, you can use descriptions, you can use examples, you can break it down into all sorts of parts. All of this thing works. And in fact, on the screen right now, you can break it down into sometimes it happens on the course, but not when practicing. It can happen on a forehand, but not on a backhand. You can, he's even offers solutions here. I don't think there's anything that requires a solution in your labels of the zeitgeist, but those are all parts of breaking it down. Here's the problem. Here's how I solve it. I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope to see you in class the next class period. I hope you're having a good day. Later.